February 2nd is not a continuation of what you felt before. It is the after. The Leo full moon was the emotional climax, the surge, the release, the heart speaking loudly, sometimes messily, sometimes dramatically. That lunation cracked things open. It stirred old feelings, exposed hidden desires, brought reactions to the surface, and forced you to feel what you had been postponing. Leo energy does not whisper, it roars. And many of you felt that roar in your chest in your sleep in sudden emotional waves that didn't fully make sense at the time. That part is done now. What arrives with the Virgo moon is not another emotional peak, but the missing piece that snaps everything into place. This is the moment after the storm, when the air feels different, when the noise fades and you suddenly notice what is actually standing in front of you. Virgo does not deal in drama or symbolism for its own sake. Virgo brings clean lines, clear data, and practical truth. Where Leo asked, "What do you feel?" Virgo asks, "What do you do next?" This is why February 2nd matters. It is not about heightened emotion or spiritual fireworks. It is about usable clarity, information you can act on, decisions you can finally make without second-guessing yourself. Here is the promise of this moment. This is not about vibes, intuition alone, or abstract signs floating in the background. This is about tangible information that changes how you move, who you respond to, what you commit to, and what you quietly walk away from. The Virgo moon works like a diagnostic scan. It shows you where the system has been glitching, where energy has been leaking, and where something small but critical has been missing. When that missing piece arrives, the fog lifts almost instantly. You don't feel high, you feel certain, and that brings us to the fog you've been experiencing. Over the past days, many of you have felt mentally static. Not confusion exactly, but a low-grade interference. That's just the doorway. You are meant to catch the targeted message hidden inside the calm, the insight that is specific, actionable, and personal. The sentence you overhear that lands too precisely to be coincidence. The realization that clicks without effort and rearranges your priorities instantly. That is the transmission, and it only lands when you are consciously participating. Chosen one, the Virgo moon does not waste messages, but it also does not chase. If you are half present, you'll receive half the signal. If you're scrolling, multitasking, or mentally rushing ahead, the message will pass quietly and move on. This is not punishment, it's mechanics. Precision energy requires precision attention. There is another trap here, and it's more dangerous than missing the message entirely. Hesitation. Virgo clarity arrives clean and sharp, but it is time-sensitive. Once the insight lands, there is a window where action is required. Not a giant leap, an incremental move, a small decision, a first step, sending the email, adjusting the routine, saying no where you've been overextending, saying yes where you've been avoiding commitment. If you hesitate too long, the fog rolls back in. Not because the clarity was false, but because unused insight destabilizes the system. The mind begins to question what the intuition already confirmed. Doubt creeps in. Noise returns. People call this losing motivation, but that's not what it is. It's a missed integration window. Virgo rewards motion, not perfection. You do not need the full plan. You need the next step. And the moment you take it, the clarity stabilizes. It anchors. It becomes part of your operating system rather than a fleeting realization. This is how Virgo turns insight into reality. Slowly, deliberately, unmistakably. Most people wait for clarity to feel complete before they act. Virgo works in the opposite direction. Action completes the clarity. Even a 5-minute step tells the universe and your own psyche that the message was received, that you are trustworthy with information, that you will use what you're given. This is why Chosen One this moment separates observers from participants. The observer feels better and moves on unchanged. The participant adjusts one thing and changes trajectory. The difference is subtle in the moment and massive over time. You felt foggy because too much information has been circulating without landing. Emotional noise, mental static, unresolved options, all competing for bandwidth. The Virgo Moon isn't here to inspire you. It's here to edit you, to remove what doesn't belong so what does can finally stand alone. So don't overdo the ritual. Don't dramatize it. Don't postpone it. Clean one small space. Set the intention. Pay attention. When the message arrives, honor it with movement. That is the full ritual. Clarity is the gift. Action is the seal. And if you move with it now, the fog does not return. It dissolves for good. Now zoom out. What happened on February 2nd is not a standalone moment, not a lucky flash of insight, not a vibe you ride for a day and forget. It is a pivot point inside a much larger February storyline, one that has been quietly restructuring your internal architecture while the external world kept moving as usual. This month is not about dramatic announcements or instant transformations. It is about recalibration, structural change, quiet but permanent realignment that sets the tone for what follows in March and beyond. February is doing what it always does at turning points. It compresses time. It asks for maturity. It removes excess and tests what is functional. Major transits and eclipse energy later in the month will amplify whatever you choose now, not what you hope to choose later. That's why February 2nd matters. It is the hinge, the moment where awareness becomes responsibility. The Leo full moon was the reveal. It showed you what needed seeing, whether you wanted to see it or not. It exposed emotional truths, creative hunger, pride wounds, attention imbalances, and the places where you were performing instead of living authentically. Leo energy does not whisper. It puts a spotlight on what the heart has been trying to say. That phase wasn't meant to be comfortable. It was meant to be honest. You felt it as emotional intensity, restlessness, or a surge of feeling that demanded acknowledgement. But revelation alone is not transformation. Seeing without doing becomes frustration. That's where the Virgo moon stepped in. Virgo does not care about drama. It cares about function. It asks one question now that you see it. What are you going to do about it? Virgo energy turns emotional truth into a to-do list. Not in a rigid way, but in a grounded, stabilizing one. It translates feeling into form. It takes the abstract and gives it edges. This is the handoff. Leo revealed the truth. Virgo assigns the task. Mercury's sextile to Chiron is the messenger that makes the truth usable. This is not insight that wounds you again. It's insight that heals by clarifying. Conversations land differently. Words arrive that put language to what you couldn't previously explain. You finally understand not just what hurts, but why it hurts and how to address it. This aspect doesn't overwhelm. It delivers the answer in a way you can actually work with. And then there is Uranus, quietly waiting in the background, preparing to station direct. This is the part many people underestimate. Uranus is the switch. It is the moment internal readiness becomes external permission. For weeks, the changes were happening inside you, recalibrating values, redefining security, rewriting your relationship to worth money and self-trust. Uranus turning direct is the green light, the signal that says movement is now supported, that the insight can become action without resistance pushing back as hard as it used to. Put together, this is the formula February is asking you to follow. The Leo full moon showed you what needed seeing. The Virgo moon shows you what needs doing. Mercury Chiron provides the insight that explains the wound and the solution at the same time. Uranus gives the go signal that says it's safe to move. This is not poetic. It is operational. The marching orders for the rest of February are simple, but they are not optional if you want momentum. When the answer arrives, take one practical step immediately. Not tomorrow, not after you overthink it, not once you feel perfectly ready, immediately. That step might be a decision you've been avoiding because you were waiting for more certainty. It might be a message you've been rehearsing but not sending. It might be a boundary you've known was necessary but delayed enforcing. It might be a plan you've kept in your head instead of writing down. It might be removing one obligation that no longer fits or committing to one habit that stabilizes your energy. It does not need to be dramatic. It needs to be real. This is where most people miss the alignment window. They receive clarity and then treat it like information instead of instruction. They think the download was the point. It wasn't. The download is the briefing. Action is the acknowledgement. Momentum is the receipt that you received the message. You will know you acted correctly, not because everything instantly resolves, but because movement begins. Energy shifts, conversations open, resistance loosens. The fog does not return in the same way. Even challenges feel cleaner, more navigable. That's how you know the system registered your response. February will continue to test this pattern. Each week will offer another small opportunity to choose function over fantasy alignment, over avoidance grounded action, over endless analysis. You are not being asked to overhaul your life. You are being asked to consistently honor what you now know. Structural change does not announce itself with fireworks. It shows up as follow-through. By the time March arrives, the people who used this pivot point well will feel steadier, clearer, and more positioned, even if their external circumstances are still catching up. The people who hesitated will feel like they missed something, but won't quite be able to name what. The difference won't be luck. It will be response. So here are your marching orders stated plainly. Pay attention when the answer arrives. Trust that it is enough. Take one practical step immediately. Let momentum confirm the alignment. Then repeat. February is not asking you to be inspired. It is asking you to be precise. And if you meet it there, the rest of the month stops feeling heavy and starts feeling directed. This is how clarity becomes trajectory. This is how insight becomes structure. This is how you move from knowing to building. And now you know what to do. And one more thing matters here, something subtle but decisive. As February continues, you will be tempted to look backward for confirmation instead of forward for evidence. The mind will ask, was that really the answer? Or did I imagine that clarity? That question is the final echo of the fog. Do not negotiate with it. Clarity does not argue. It instructs. The Virgo Moon teaches discernment through repetition. Each time you act on what you've received, your nervous system learns trust. Each time you delay, the signal weakens, and the old noise tries to reassert itself. This is not punishment. It is mechanics. Precision requires engagement. For the rest of February, think in terms of maintenance rather than motivation. Keep your environment simple. Keep your calendar honest. Keep your energy protected. You are not meant to chase outcomes right now. You are meant to support the structure that allows outcomes to arrive without force. Watch how quickly things respond once you do. Watch how doors open not with drama, but with ease. Watch how the right conversations happen without rehearsal. Watch how your confidence stabilizes, not because you feel invincible, but because you feel oriented. That is the real signal of alignment. Not excitement, not urgency, orientation. February is training you to move like someone who knows where they're going, even if the destination isn't fully visible yet. Take the step. Let the path meet you halfway. Thoughts looping without resolution. Emotional noise that didn't belong to the present moment. Difficulty focusing on simple tasks, even though nothing was technically wrong. This wasn't burnout, and it wasn't a lack of motivation. It was a signal that your system was waiting for specific clarity, not more effort. Leo stirred the emotional truth, but it didn't tell you how to organize it. Virgo does. This fog came from holding too many variables at once. Too many open tabs, too many maybes, too many unresolved micro-decisions that drained energy without you realizing it. Virgo energy specializes in closing loops. It takes what Leo exposed and sorts it into categories: keep, release, adjust, refine. That's why this moon feels quieter but sharper. It doesn't overwhelm you. It pinpoints. Now here's the part that matters most. Not everyone receives this Virgo moon the same way. For most people, it will feel like a mild reset, a subtle nudge toward productivity or order. But 3 signs are in the direct line of this cosmic transmission. For them, this isn't subtle at all. This is a moment where a single realization restructures the entire month ahead. A sentence you hear, a message you read, a detail you suddenly notice that reframes everything. If you are one of these signs, you may already feel it building. A quiet sense that something is about to make sense. Not emotionally, but logically. The kind of clarity that doesn't require reassurance. You don't need to talk it through with 5 people. You just know. And once you know, you move. The reason this moment matters is because Virgo clarity doesn't just answer questions. It changes behavior. After February 2nd, some of you will stop chasing explanations. Others will stop waiting for permission. Some will quietly withdraw energy from situations that no longer justify the cost. And some will finally commit to something they've been circling without landing. This is not a loud turning point. It's a precise one. Think of it like this. Leo showed you what your heart was reacting to. Virgo shows you what actually deserves your time. Leo exposed the emotional truth. Virgo translates that truth into action steps. That translation is the missing piece. And once it arrives, the fog can't survive. If you've felt mentally scattered, emotionally overstimulated, or oddly disconnected from your usual sense of direction, that wasn't a failure on your part. It was timing. You were ahead of the information. Now the information is catching up to you. February 2nd doesn't ask you to feel more. It asks you to see clearly, to notice what's inefficient, to recognize what's misaligned, to identify what no longer needs your emotional labor, and to do this without guilt, drama, or over-explanation. For the 3 signs directly hit by this Virgo moon, the clarity won't be abstract. It will be specific. Names, tasks, dates, decisions. Something becomes obvious that wasn't before. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. This is the moment where emotional processing ends and strategic movement begins. The missing piece arrives not as a revelation from the sky, but as a grounded realization inside you. The kind that makes you sit still for a second and think, oh, that's it. That's what's been off. And from that point forward, the month unfolds very differently. The Leo full moon cracked the door open. The Virgo moon hands you the key, the instructions, and the map. What's happening now is not random emotional spillover or a vague energetic mood. There is a mechanical shift taking place in the sky, and understanding it explains why clarity suddenly becomes possible after days or even weeks of internal noise. The difference between confusion and clarity is not effort, it's timing. And the timing right now is precise. The Leo full moon operated like a spotlight. Leo energy illuminates whatever has been pushed aside emotionally. It brings exposure, reaction, and heightened self-awareness, but it doesn't organize what it reveals. Leo says, look at this. Virgo says, now let's deal with it. That shift in lunar tone is everything. Where Leo amplifies emotion, Virgo edits it. Where Leo dramatizes, Virgo refines. Where Leo demands expression, Virgo demands application. This is why the emotional peak has already passed. The intensity you felt wasn't meant to last. It was meant to surface information. Virgo's role is to take that information and convert it into something usable. Virgo doesn't ask how you feel about the situation anymore. It asks what needs to be adjusted, corrected, or removed so your system functions properly again. This is the lunar equivalent of closing unnecessary browser tabs so your mind can run smoothly. But the clarity doesn't come from the moon alone. The deeper mechanism is happening through Mercury and Chiron working quietly but decisively beneath the surface. Mercury in Aquarius sextile Chiron in Aries is the first major trigger, and this aspect is subtle but surgical. Mercury in Aquarius doesn't think emotionally. It thinks objectively, futuristically, and from a higher vantage point. It allows you to step outside your personal drama and see the pattern. Chiron in Aries represents the wound around identity, confidence, and self-trust. When these two connect harmoniously, the result is not just information, but healing clarity. This is what makes the realization land without pain. This is the kind of answer that doesn't reopen wounds. It closes them. You may suddenly understand why something hurt without reliving the hurt. You may recognize why a pattern kept repeating without blaming yourself or anyone else. You may finally see that a decision you avoided was never complicated, only emotionally charged. Mercury and Chiron together dissolve the emotional charge so the truth can be accepted calmly. That's why this feels like relief rather than shock. Then the moon enters Virgo, and this is where the magic becomes practical. When the moon moves into Virgo, the mental environment changes. Emotional static drops. The background noise quiets. This creates a clean mental landing strip for insights to arrive without interference. You're not being flooded with feelings anymore. You're being given space. And in that space, the message finally makes sense. This is why some of you may notice clarity arriving in very ordinary ways. A thought that suddenly clicks. A list that finally feels doable. A realization that sounds almost boring but changes everything. Virgo doesn't deliver epiphanies with fireworks. It delivers them with accuracy. And there's another force at work here. One that explains why this clarity isn't just internal. Uranus is preparing to station direct. Whenever Uranus slows down to change direction, it acts like a pressure valve releasing. Uranus governs breakthroughs, sudden realizations, and liberation from stagnation. While retrograde, its work is internal. You've been having internal revolutions without visible results. Now that Uranus is preparing to move forward again, those internal shifts are ready to translate into external movement. This is what gives the moment its green light quality. What you've been reconsidering around value security, money, self-worth, and long-term stability is no longer theoretical. Uranus direct energy says, now act on what you already know. This is especially potent for decisions involving finances, boundaries, pricing your time, or choosing stability over chaos. You're no longer meant to process these topics internally. You're meant to move. That's why the fog lifts now instead of later. The system is aligning so that insight becomes action-ready. The core thesis of this moment is simple, but powerful clarity arrives when the noise calms. The Leo moon created noise on purpose. It shook loose what was stuck emotionally. The Virgo moon quiets the system so the signal can come through. Mercury delivers the message. Chiron removes the pain from receiving it. Uranus opens the door so you can actually do something with what you learn. This is not passive clarity. It is instructional clarity. Tomorrow is designed to translate insight into action without force. You won't need motivation speeches or emotional reinforcement. Once you see the truth, the action feels obvious. That's how you know it's real clarity and not just another mood shift. Pay attention to what feels suddenly simple, what no longer requires analysis, what decision stops looping and starts resolving itself. Virgo clarity doesn't argue. It confirms. This is the cosmic mechanics at work: spotlight, exposure, quiet, insight, movement. The missing piece doesn't arrive loudly. It arrives cleanly. And once it does, forward motion becomes natural again. Not everyone receives the Virgo moon's clarity in the same way. As the noise settles and the signal sharpens, 3 signs stand directly beneath this transmission. For them, the insight is not vague, symbolic, or purely emotional. It arrives as something usable, something that immediately reorients how they move forward. The answer doesn't just explain the past. It organizes the future. For Virgo, this moment feels like coming home to yourself after being mentally displaced for far too long. The fog that has surrounded your sense of direction lifts not dramatically, but decisively. You don't suddenly feel euphoric. You feel aligned. Self-trust returns in a grounded way, the kind that doesn't need reassurance. What makes this clarity different is that it's practical. It applies directly to your daily life, your work, your health, your routines, or a sacrifice you've been wrestling with finally makes sense in context. Virgo clarity is rarely about shortcuts. It's about seeing the full system and understanding where your energy is best invested. Tomorrow doesn't bring temporary relief or a motivational boost. It brings a new internal reference point, a North Star that quietly guides your decisions from here on out. You stop asking whether you're doing enough and start asking whether what you're doing is aligned. That shift alone changes everything. You may realize that one adjustment made consistently is more powerful than 10 scattered efforts. The answer you receive doesn't add more to your plate. It edits it. For Aquarius, the clarity arrives through language. Over the past weeks, heavy Aquarius energy has been reconstructing your identity from the inside out. This has been disorienting. You've known where you're headed, but you haven't always known how to explain it. Being misunderstood has been a recurring theme, and that misunderstanding may have made you question whether your vision was too strange, too ahead of its time, or too disconnected from the world around you. Tomorrow changes that. The answer comes as words that finally validate what you already knew internally. This could be a conversation, a piece of information, a message, or even a phrase that unlocks confidence. Suddenly, you can articulate your vision in a way that lands. Your ideas don't feel diluted, but they become accessible. You're no longer translating yourself down. You're translating clearly. There's a deep healing here around identity. The sense of being unseen or misread dissolves not because you change who you are, but because you find the right frequency to communicate on. Uranus, Aquarius's ruling planet, adds an extra layer to this moment by activating foundational themes. This suggests that the clarity doesn't just move you forward. It also repairs something in the past. An old narrative about who you are or why you are the way you are gets rewritten. You may realize that what once felt like a flaw was actually preparation. The answer you receive doesn't just validate your future. It reframes your history. For Aries, the clarity is quieter but deeply relieving. The core wound activated here has been around self-worth isolation and the belief that you must handle everything alone. Chiron in Aries has been surfacing this pattern repeatedly, forcing you to confront how often you default to brute force when support would be wiser. You've been strong for so long that strength started to feel lonely. Tomorrow delivers a different message. It shows you that you're not alone, and more importantly, that you don't have to be. The answer arrives as support strategy tools or allies that shift the burden you've been carrying. This isn't about someone rescuing you. It's about realizing that vulnerability can be a bridge rather than a liability. Asking for help or accepting it when offered doesn't weaken your authority. It expands it. This clarity prepares you for what's coming next. Saturn's upcoming shift signals increased responsibility, but tomorrow teaches you an essential truth. Before that weight arrives, strength includes alliances. You don't lose independence by collaborating. You gain sustainability. The answer you receive helps you redesign how you lead, how you initiate, and how you carry responsibility without burning out. What connects these three signs is not the content of the message, but the effect of it. The clarity doesn't excite you into motion. It steadies you. It removes the internal argument that has been draining energy. After tomorrow, you don't need to convince yourself anymore. You simply know what to do. This is how Virgo Moon clarity works at its highest level. It doesn't overwhelm, it calibrates. And once calibrated, forward movement becomes natural again. Chosen one. This part matters more than people realize, because clarity under a Virgo Moon is not something that simply happens to you. It's something you meet halfway. Virgo energy is precise, practical, and responsive. It does not shout. It responds to participation. That's why there is a receiving protocol, and why so many people walk right past the message that was meant specifically for them. The ritual is deceptively simple. Clean or organize one small area, not your entire home, not your whole life, not a dramatic reset. One drawer, one corner of your desk, one digital folder, one notes app, one email thread you've been avoiding. The scale is small on purpose. Virgo does not reward overwhelm. It rewards intentional precision. When you bring order to a contained space, you send a signal that you are capable of holding clarity without scattering it. This external act mirrors an internal readiness. You are telling your nervous system, your mind, and your intuition, there is space now, not later, now. And space is the currency clarity uses to enter. Chaos blocks reception. Even mild clutter creates static. When you clear something tangible, your inner world follows faster than logic can explain. As you do this, set a simple intention. Not a long prayer, not a dramatic affirmation. Just a sentence spoken or thought with presence. I'm making space to receive clarity. That's it. No demand, no timeline, no attachment to how the answer should arrive. Virgo energy works best when the request is clean and unforced. Then you listen. Not with strain, not with obsession, but with alert softness. The answer rarely arrives as a lightning bolt. It comes through conversations that suddenly stand out, articles that seem to speak directly to your situation, memories that resurface with new meaning, or a quiet knowing that feels obvious in hindsight. The mind often tries to dismiss these moments because they don't feel dramatic enough. That dismissal is the trap. Most people under this Virgo moon will feel slightly more organized, slightly calmer, slightly clearer, and they will stop there. They'll mistake surface improvement for completion. They'll think the reward was the tidy space or the calm mood. But that's not the gift.